Hello and welcome to Follow the Money. I'm Raine Musñgi. Join us as we explore the tools and insights you need to jumpstart your financial journey. Asian IPOs are predicted to have a blockbuster week ahead. According to data compiled by Bloomberg, around 20 companies from Asia Pacific are listing shares next week in deals that may raise as much as $8.3 billion, the biggest weekly volume since April 2022. The heavy supply includes deals from China, India, and Japan, underscoring the broad revival in share sales across the region. The performance of the newly listed shares will be keenly watched by bankers planning to bring a spree of equity offerings in Asia over the next few weeks as companies and major shareholders attempt to close deals before the November 5 election in the U.S. The Hang Seng, Shanghai Composite, TAIEX, Nikkei 225 all higher by 0.5% right now. The Korean Kospi up by 1%. The Philippines posts its biggest dollar surplus in nearly 4 years, a positive sign for the country's financial stability. Data from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas shows a $3.5 billion balance of payments surplus in September, a major turnaround from last year's $414 million deficit. This surplus was largely driven by foreign borrowings by the government and by earnings from the central bank's investment abroad. This is the biggest surplus since December 2020, when the country posted a record BOP surplus of $16 billion. As of September, the total BOP surplus stands at $5.1 billion, already exceeding the BSP's full-year forecast of $2.3 billion. A larger dollar surplus helps strengthen the Philippines' reserves, providing a buffer against external shocks and improving investor confidence in the economy. Now let's take a look at the country's external debt payments, which have gone down as of July. The Philippines paid $7.7 billion on its external debt, nearly 8% less than the $8.3 billion paid last year. Principal payments dropped by 28% to $3.1 billion, while interest payments rose by 15% to $4.6 billion. Now, as of the second quarter, the debt payments were 3.1% of the gross domestic product, down from 3.6% last year. This reduction lightens the government's financial load, allowing more flexibility for other spending needs. The Department of Energy is set to cancel at least 105 renewable energy contracts for failing to meet deadlines. Energy Undersecretary Rowena Cristina Guevara explains that these contracts will be reassigned to new developers who can complete the projects. Many of these contracts awarded between 2017 and 2019 faced delays due to issues over securing permits and grid connections. These projects cover a range of renewable sources, including solar, hydropower, wind, geothermal, and biomass energy. In June, the department updated its guidelines to remove developers who failed to make progress, allowing more serious and committed developers to take over the projects. A leading economist suggests that countries should consider imposing a wealth tax on the super rich to help fund efforts against poverty and climate change. This idea comes from Jeffrey Sachs, a world-renowned expert on global development and sustainability, who has advised the United Nations and governments across the globe. Speaking to Business World, Sachs said that taxing the wealthy is both fair and practical, as the super rich have more money than they can ever spend. However, he also points out that such taxes could be challenging to implement given the strong political influence of billionaires. On the other hand, Bureau of Internal Revenue Commissioner Romeo Lumagi Jr. cautions that a wealth tax could discourage foreign investments and lead to capital flight.
One major point to consider here is how would that affect the foreign investors here and the wealth that is in the Philippines? Would that have an effect of just the wealth actually, or the money or the assets just leaving here in the Philippines because of this wealth tax? So it's really it's not there's a really good argument against it. It's a very important and very critical decision point because of the effect of the wealth here in the Philippines.
In overseas news, Chinese drone maker DJI files a lawsuit against the Pentagon seeking to be removed from a blacklist of alleged Chinese military companies. DJI argues it's unfairly listed as a national security threat. It adds it has attempted to engage with the Defense Department for more than 6 months and has now determined it has no alternative other than to seek relief in federal court. The Pentagon added DJI to its blacklist in 2022. Since then, DJI's sales in the U.S. have fallen by over 20%. The company has faced scrutiny from Washington in recent years, including for its role in surveilling ethnic minorities in China. Its drones have also been allegedly used in the war between Russia and Ukraine. In Europe, Germany is struggling with new data showing GDP contracted last quarter. The recession has been fueled by high inflation and energy costs, which have crippled manufacturing. The outlook is grim, and they need immediate policy intervention. Unemployment is expected to rise as businesses cut back on operations. A new McKinsey report shows China facing staggering challenges with growth projections dimming. The report reveals a need for significant reforms to stimulate investment and innovation. Without reforms, China risks a longer period of economic stagnation, according to the report. Growth is expected to drop below 4% in the coming year. In Canada, Philip Morris, British American Tobacco, and Japan Tobacco will pay $23.6 billion to settle a long-running tobacco lawsuit in Canada as a part of a court-appointed mediator's proposed plan. Philip Morris said if approved, the plan would be the largest settlement of its kind outside the U.S. The proposal comes nearly 10 years after a Quebec court in 2015 ruled that the companies were long aware of the links between cigarettes and cancer, but failed to warn their customers. The landmark decision led the companies to place their Canadian operations into bankruptcy, kicking off years of negotiations. The proposal sends roughly $6.5 billion Canadian dollars directly to smokers and their heirs hit by illnesses such as lung or throat cancer, reserving roughly $4 billion for victims in Quebec who first bought the suits. That amounts to awards of up to 100,000 Canadian per person, depending on the illness and where and when the person started smoking. Walmart is reaching a $3.1 billion settlement over opioid lawsuits. The company will use these funds for addiction treatment programs across the U.S. They hope this settlement will make a positive impact on communities affected by the opioid crisis. Over 500,000 lives have been lost to opioid overdoses since 1999. Google is back in the courtroom. The U.S. Justice Department has filed a landmark antitrust lawsuit against Google, alleging it uses its dominant position to stifle competition in the Android Play Store. The case is about ensuring fair market for all developers. With over 70% market share, Google's control is under fire. Smaller developers are already feeling the pinch, with a recent study showing that 45% losses due to Google's policies. Switching on to Netflix, its share soared following strong third quarter earnings. The streaming giant reported an expected rise in subscriber growth, adding 8 million new users this quarter. And it's back to growth mode, and the future looks bright for the video service provider. Netflix is now closer to its pre-pandemic numbers, a sign of resilient demand. Embattled plane maker Boeing sells a small defense subsidiary that makes surveillance equipment for the U.S. military. Boeing says digital receiver technology will be sold to Thales Defense and Security, an arm of Europe's largest defense electronics firm. This comes as Boeing reels from financial struggles and a worker strike. On Wednesday, factory workers will vote on a new contract proposal that includes a 35% hike over 4 years. The offer includes a $7,000 signing bonus, reinstated incentive plan, and higher contributions to their retirement plans. This deal can end a costly 5-week strike involving around 33,000 workers, mostly in Washington state. In a landmark move, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission has approved options for listing spot Bitcoin ETFs on the New York Stock Exchange. This move could signal a new era for crypto investments, allowing investors more flexibility. This approval marks a significant step forward in making digital assets accessible to all. Bitcoin jumped 8% in after-hours trading following the announcement. And TikTok influencers are turning their followings into a force for good. They're promoting charity through engaging content, encouraging donations within their communities. They have the power to make a difference, they say, and TikTok is the perfect platform. Donations have increased by 30% thanks to these initiatives. Up next, Weihan Sun shares how economic uncertainty is shaping Filipinos' borrowing behaviors in 2024. Follow the Money. We'll be right back. Stay with us. As credit perceptions evolve in the Philippines, TransUnion's Credit Perception Index provides key insights into how Filipinos view borrowing and financial trust in 2024. With rising economic uncertainties, many are reevaluating their relationship with credit, highlighting both opportunities and challenges for financial inclusion. Today, we are joined by Weihan Sun, Principal of Research and Consulting for Asia Pacific at TransUnion, to delve deeper into these shifts in the credit landscape. Weihan, good morning and welcome to Follow the Money.
Morning, Raine. Great to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us all the way from Hong Kong. Now, to set the stage, could you give us a brief overview of TransUnion's Credit Perception Index and its key findings regarding credit perceptions in the Philippines?
Sure, Raine. So the Consumer Credit Perception Index was developed last year by TransUnion, and the purpose of this index was to measure how consumers in the Philippines are actually perceiving credit. And especially with the population becoming more and more banked, we wanted to understand how consumers are perceiving banking products. And credit is a very important product within the banking journey for a consumer. So the key findings for this year is actually a marked improvement. The Credit Perception Index grew to 69 from 65 in the prior year, and that's generally the average score that we've observed, which is a good sign because it shows improvement and acceptance from consumers on credit. Now, with good news, there's also some bad news. So for consumers who are unbanked in the previous year, who remain unbanked in this current year, their perception of credit is very low. It's around 39 from 53 in the prior year. So that, again, when you see a lot of efforts within the country in promoting further financial inclusion, you're likely to see that score actually improve in the following year. But right now, the unbanked population is not having a good perception of credit.
Weihan, your study did find that trust in financial institutions increased significantly in 2024. What do you think are the key factors behind this growing trust?
So again, Raine, I believe the financial inclusion drive that's occurring both on the government, the regulator, as well as the banking sector as a whole is improving perception for consumers because they're allowing more access. About 14% of consumers feel more comfortable, and a 14% increase that is from the prior year, feel more comfortable borrowing money from traditional banks. About 11% showed improvements in terms of virtual digital service providers, and less so, about 11% of consumers actually decreased from borrowing money from friends and family. And that's because these lending institutions are allowing further access, which means consumers are feeling more trust with these institutions than they did a year ago.
Have you observed any differences in credit behaviors or attitudes between regions across Asia versus the Philippines?
Well, in developed markets such as Hong Kong, you're going to see a lot more greater penetration. But in Philippines, what we observed in particular is the growth in the number of people actually accessing credit products. And that's a good sign in a lot of aspects. If you look at the median age in the Philippines, it's around 25 years old, which means if consumers are getting access at a young age, they're really getting there in the early part of the journey, which allows them a long term to build their credit history. So getting early access to credit really helps consumers, especially with the country's aspirations of becoming an upper middle income country. Credit is going to play a significant role in many Filipinos achieving their financial goals. So it's a very good sign, an encouraging sign to see greater penetration of credit products in everyday Filipinos' lives.
Understood. Now, looking to the future, is there a vision that you have for the role of credit evolving in the Philippines? Are there any trends you foresee for 2025 and beyond?
So for 2025 beyond, we're going to continue probably seeing the trajectory we've seen in this year and the last year. Following the reopening of the region post the COVID pandemic, you're going to see a lot more rapid growth occurring. And we're going to see probably more growth in the credit card sector in particular, as with e-commerce picking up in the region, as well as the convenience credit cards provide to consumers. You're likely to see more consumers taking on that credit product. The good caveat for credit card is really allows consumers to build their credit profile really quickly, as long as they obviously keep up with the obligation of repayment. The other aspect is consumers getting better credit profiles through using their credit cards correctly allows them further access to more traditional products such as auto loans and even mortgages. So we do foresee the credit journey and evolution of Filipinos growing as a result in the following year.
Thank you so much, Weihan Sun of TransUnion in Hong Kong, for sharing your invaluable insights with us today. It has been enlightening to hear how your data is helping Filipinos better understand and manage their credit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, as Weihan Sun emphasized, credit education and trust in financial institutions are crucial for fostering financial inclusion in the Philippines, ensuring consumers make informed decisions in a changing landscape. And before we go, we leave you with this thought from former World Bank President David Malpass: the future of credit is trust, transparency, and informed consumers. And that is it for today's edition of Follow the Money. I'm Raine Musñgi. Thank you so much for watching. Keep it here on BNC, the Billionaire News channel, always on top.